And now, Michigan Reimagined with Chris Buck.
So there are several of what I would call behind-the-scenes industries when it comes to the revitalization of Michigan, and one's environmental consulting. One Lansing-area owned and operated firm has been growing and winning awards. So here to share their story is the CEO and principal scientist for Triterra, Don McNabb. Welcome to the show, Don.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I'm glad to be here.
So for non-scientists, what exactly does a firm like Triterra do, and how do you help make Michigan more vibrant?
Well, first off, we're out there to help make and evaluate the community to see if there's any main issues from an environmental perspective that could create or affect the health of the surrounding community.
Okay, so basically it's looking for contamination?
Correct.
Okay, so really it's public good and potential public harm and identifying where that harm is and trying to create a process to go get it cleaned up.
Exactly.
Now, is all that work contingent on like a coming proposed development project, or do people hire you to do that independent of, I think as a former economic developer and kind of real estate guy and a vibrancy enthusiast, I think of you getting engaged when there's a project at hand, but that might be just a tip of the iceberg.
Right. Yeah, that is. It's one side of the business is when we do go in and commercial property transactions happen. A lot of where the funding comes from, they want to back their loan and they want to make sure they're backing it on something that's not a big problem.
Okay.
Down the road, if you're a financial institution and you had to take it back, you don't want to take back a problem. So they'll gauge that up front.
Sure. And that's a due diligence component, I would imagine, right? So if
exactly.
someone's going to go buy a empty industrial building or go develop a corner in a town, whatever, they're going to want to know before they consummate the purchase of that land that there's nothing that's going to prevent them from developing it or just enjoying that, because they would, I guess, if there is contamination that's unidentified and then they own the property, that could technically, I guess, then fall on them to clean it up if it's identified later on.
Exactly.
Okay. So you're brought in to do that initial testing to make sure that
yes.
you give it the green light that it's okay. Okay. Yeah. Got it. So how did you get into this industry? I mean, it's certainly not a mainstream, I don't know if you were pining in high school to get out there and and do this kind of work, but maybe you were. So talk about your path.
No, my path was a little different. I was originally going to go into athletic training.
Okay.
And then kind of got talked out of it about school counselors. Looked in what the other passion I had was always being outdoors.
Okay.
Doing something, that I can enjoy outdoors was the first thing. And next thing you know, that led me into the science path and looking into what's out there that we could help with. So, next thing you know, graduated college and on our way. So.
And did you work for another firm in this industry and then peel off and start your own, or how did that path go?
Correct. Yeah. And back in, I'd been in the industry for about 7 years, back in October 2008, where the Midwestern firm that we'd worked for walked in and was actually closing down operations, paralleling with the issue with the auto industry. National news, Michigan was in a bad spot if GM was not going to be there. So. Right. That kind of tipped the iceberg to go there. There was also a bad client we were dealing with at the time, and they were working out to not work with that client anymore. So, next thing you know, there's no job. What else can I do? Split up and try to find another job, or, hey, maybe this is the opportunity to take and start something special. So
that's a gutsy move. I mean, so when did Triterra get founded?
October of 2008.
Okay.
We started there with, I had a partner, Alan Hooper, at the time. And it was just a little bit of a learning aspect. I think at that point we were always a small regional office. We didn't see a lot of the backside, how a business operates in that industry. But we always we knew the nuts and bolts of the work that was being done. So, we were able to do retain 100% of our clients at the time.
Wow.
And, started us on the right step. We didn't really have to go find job one. We had job one already there. So.
All right. Well, that's a good way to start. No question. So tell me about your team now. Like, how is your kind of org chart created? What are the roles that are played? And, what does your staff kind of do on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Well, we're in a wide range of areas of environmental consulting. We do anything from environmental due diligence. We do contaminant investigation and remediation. We do asbestos, lead, paint, and mold. And we even get into the natural resource side with wetlands and stormwater management. So everybody's split up there. We're up to 24 full-time employees. And we have a leadership team that's 5 people. that's 6 people in that area. And we're now operating on the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS.
Yep.
And that helps us with better clarity down, from top to bottom in the organization. So all staff knows what their roles are and how they fit and where we're going as a team.
Right on. Okay, good. So now we talked a little bit about how you get dispatched to go, survey, space and make sure that it's clean or if it's contaminated. Is that where your role stops, or do you actually go and do cleanup if contamination is found?
Well, a lot more time we're the managing person for the environmental. So we're involved and we're overseeing the process.
Okay.
We don't necessarily do the direct remediation. A lot of times we don't have that type of equipment or we don't have that type of expertise. We're there guiding, whether we're digging out thousands of tons of soil and where do we start and where do we stop, and we direct that aspect.
Right.
Or the other side is, from a remedial side, we do our own self-implemented remediation vapor mitigation systems, where we're doing some things hand-on
right.
as much as we can.
Sure, and that's not uncommon, right? You essentially act as almost a general contractor,
right.
For the owner, right? You're the trusted partner that came in and identified it, and then what does an owner of land know about how to get the contamination out, right? So you kind of know all the players and you contract with them and oversee their work and make sure that when it's done, you do your follow-up testing and make sure that it's done right.
Exactly.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So geographically, kind of what range do you guys cover? I know you're here in the Lansing area, but how far do you guys reach?
Well, it depends on the client. We're willing to go wherever the client needs us to go, essentially. Ideally, we service the entire state of Michigan. My biggest job to date has been in the Western UP. It's not really an easy way to get there. Wow. It's an 8-hour drive each way. If we can manage that, we can manage any type of job. Out there have been far south as Nashville, Tennessee, Bronson, Missouri. More often than not, you tend to be in the local markets where you're at, right. Just because it's easier to service those jobs, especially when it comes to the dollar of the project. So.
Okay. But you've been hiring a lot of people lately too, right? Are you creating more kind of satellite locations around Michigan to make it easier for people to find you?
Yes. That's what we're doing now is one way to grow is to get more people in more locations. We have an office established in Alma, Michigan, that currently has 3 employees stationed there, tied to an Alma College graduate
nice.
Who has a good relationship with Alma College. And then over the last year and a half, we've added 2 people in the Western Michigan Grand Rapids market, as we look to grow into a full-time office there.
So strategically, you can really cover a lot of real estate, with those 3 locations.
Yes, exactly.
That's great. All right. So, you're not at the forefront of these projects, right? But I know personally that you've been behind the scenes on a lot of projects that people might be familiar with. Can you share with us some things that people can see now that you can say, yeah, back about, whatever, X amount of time before the shovels went in the ground, we were the ones involved in getting it ready?
Right. We had... trying to think of some of the ones. There's some apartment complexes. A lot of the skyline in East Lansing, some way, shape, or form, we've been involved in, whether it's the Hub apartment complex. Not sure that it's the Graduate Hotel. It's one right in that vicinity.
Yep.
A lot more of the smaller complexes that were down Michigan Avenue. We've also done the Venue down on Michigan Avenue.
Okay.
We've done Capitol View Apartments down here in Lansing. It's just been... You don't realize how fast you go or how many of these projects you get involved in until you're involved in a bunch of them.
Right. Yeah, no kidding.
The other big one there was the Red Cedar development over there with Continental Ferguson as the developer.
Right. And that was a fast one, right?
Yeah.
It just kind of whisked right through. No, yeah. I heard the stories that it was, I had Ferguson on, Chris Strelkowski talking about the Red Cedar process. And we started off with how long of a runway that was to actually get that going. So you were a part of that.
Yeah. That was a big soil management project. There was a lot of stuff from an old golf course where they had their fertilizers, pesticides and whatnot, and created some metals issues in the ground that we had to obviously make sure were safe. And then you couple that along with the drain commissioners redeveloping the Montgomery Drain, which we're a part of as well.
Okay.
Those are 2 big projects, and they're coming from 2 different directions.
Right.
And they have to kind of align, or it's going to be a struggle for both the new development and the drain commissioner to do their project. So,
and I got to tell you, from everything I've heard, and I've heard horror stories in other realms, but I hear that while that took a long time, there was a pretty solid collaboration of parties on that. I don't know if you would corroborate that, but it seemed like, usually drain commissioner and developer are at odds and really struggle with finding the common ground. But I've heard nothing but praises for the drain commissioner from the development team on how, they really worked through a bunch of things together hand in hand.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the part of the thing is it was proactive on both parts up front. If they didn't have to hit that common goal and realize the complications if they didn't work together to get through it, I think it could have been a lot more difficult than the project was and take a lot longer than, it already took. So,
right. So now, I'm kind of asking everyone in this time of our lives, how did the pandemic affect Triterra?
Well, we were one of the, I want to say in a way, lucky in a way. Our current office where majority of our staff is very spacious. So we had a lot of room, a lot of offices where you're semi-isolated. Early on, we did go back and send people home for a period of time, and really it was majority of 2010. We were then deemed as an essential company, doing the environmental and making sure that the water's safe around us and all that. So, it slowly came back. But overall, it was about a 1 to 2 month training period where we did internal training for our staff rather than laying them off or putting them to unemployment.
Right.
We wanted to keep our staff, and that was a priority. And then by the end of the year, we still were actually growing. So, a lot of companies struggled heavily. We were able, with the amount of work out there, that we were able to, reposition a little bit and tackle some of the different work first. When we couldn't do as much stuff in person or on location. So
it seems like the nature of your organization. I do know your space, and you're right. It's a pretty large, facility, at least for when people are in the office, they have the ability to stay away from each other, but essentially you're outdoors, you're essential. Mm-hmm. It seems like the work that's being done is not crowd driven or, it's science. So I was hoping that you kind of came out of that reasonably unscathed. It seems like you're one of the industries that might have been able to push through with minimal disruption, although I'm sure it wasn't fun, but crazy times. And then, I mentioned it a little bit before, but you've been hiring. And another tailing issue that the pandemic has caused, or I don't know if it's a cause, but if it's certainly a correlation, is staffing, hiring, right? I mean, it seems like most industries are saying, I've got more business than I can handle. Things are opening up, but it doesn't help me any because I don't have the people to deliver my product or serve whatever we, deliver to the consumer. You've been able, it seems like, to find talent. Has it been more arduous than it normally would have been, or have you been, fortunate in that realm as well?
Well, I think it's pretty fortunate. When you look at competition for new graduates coming out of school, they're out there. You just have to know where to go and find them. We generally don't have any problem with 0 to 1 year type experienced individuals coming out of school. They're looking, they're active, even though the pandemic was there, colleges are still graduating people. So, there's new people there. And, when you come to experienced, it is a little harder to find, and it's a little more competitive, and it just seems like it takes longer. Right. More so than you can find them. And we work with some recruiters to help us on that side of it too.
So, but the people you hire seem to have a pretty specialized degree and a passion, right? So, and those people are coming out. So tell me about Triterra's culture and your value proposition when it comes to work for us instead of someone else. I know you're prideful of your company, but share a little bit about what makes you different.
Well, that's hard. It's hard to really separate it unless you work with us, and that's what we say. It's not the work we do. It's how we do it that really separates us. We put a priority on our clients' needs first and foremost. A lot of times we hear that our competitors are not responsive to their needs or not timely enough when it comes to their project. Specifically, like if you're a developer, time is money. The whole thing is they need to get their deal closed. They need to get moving on their development that they're moving forward with. So anything we do as an environmental consultant that slows them down doesn't help the process. So we have to be as proactive as possible to that conversation. And so they understand we don't look at ourselves as somebody just doing a job for them. We look at them as a partner. we're helping them to get across the finish line in what they're trying to accomplish.
Well, that's great. I mean, that makes all the difference. Now, I know business owners are sometimes a little humble, and they should be about this kind of stuff, but you've won a reasonable amount of awards, which should make you really proud. I mean, you started in 2008, looking at your website, what is your website?
Triterra.us. It's Triterra.us.
Got it. So if you want to follow up, you want to learn more about the company, certainly check out their website. But on there, you've got a couple of awards that you've won, maybe back in 14, 16, 18. I remember seeing them scattered through. But just talking about your company culture and the way you deliver your services, it seems like those are well deserved. What was your most recent accolade? I read, and I could share it, but I want you to share it.
Yeah, well, here recently, even dealing with the pandemic, the INC magazine puts out a 5,000 list. That's the top 5,000 companies in growth, private companies in growth in the U.S. And Triterra made that list.
Congratulations. That's fantastic. So what's your future? I mean, you talked about expansion, you talked about following clients' needs around the country, but deliberately, kind of what do you think your next, maybe say 5 years are going to look like?
Well, assuming the economy stays in a relatively consistent, manner, then, we're continuing to grow. We want to continue to grow throughout Michigan and the Midwestern region of the U.S., at least in the near future. Just going back to what we just said earlier, that we're different than a lot of the other firms out there. And when you work with us, you find that out. We want to spread that out so more people have the opportunity to work with the way that we do business. Got it.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being a part of the show here today. But Triterra.us is where you can learn more. We've been speaking with Don McNabb, the CEO and principal scientist for Triterra. I really appreciate you joining me here today, and I hope you have a great end of the year and a great 2022.
Yes, thanks, Chris, for having me.